What are the biggest mistakes photographers make when it comes to lighting their subjects? Let's dive in. Are you tired of the endless stream of fantasy marketing and vanity metrics? Yeah, so am I. My name is James Patrick, and I'm an internationally published photographer, media specialist, and marketing strategist. As a creative entrepreneur, I face the same exact frustrations you have, being bombarded by generic advice that promises success but never lives up to the hype. We need to move beyond the posturing, beyond the facade, beyond the image to navigate the unique challenges we face as creatives. Together, we're going to dive into real stories, real strategies, and the real work that can lead to the real results. This is the Beyond the Image podcast. What is going on? And thank you so much for tuning into this or latest episode of the Beyond the Image podcast. I'm Martha. You could take some time to get some information, get a little inspiration to help you in your entrepreneurial journey. So, what are the biggest mistakes photographers make when it comes to lighting their subjects? And, not to come from a mountain of infallibility, I'm not pious. I've made every one of these mistakes myself throughout my career, which is why I am aware of them. The first one is confusing quantity of light and quality of light. So, the mistake people make with this is they think the brighter the light is, the harsher it is. And that is not always exclusively the case. You really have to break out the difference between quantity and quality. Quantity, how much light there is, meaning how bright is the light. And quality is how soft or hard the light is on the subject. So quality exists on a spectrum, quantity exists on a spectrum. You can have a little bit of light that is very soft, but you can also have a little bit of light that's very harsh. Just like you can have a lot of light that's very harsh and a lot of light that's very soft. Lots of light does not mean hard, and a little bit of light does not mean soft. So, how we soften light is we move it closer to the subject. That's it. The bigger the light source is in relation to the subject, the softer that light is going to be. So if I were to take a very, very, very big softbox and put it right next to a subject, that is going to be incredibly soft light. If I took that same very, very, very big softbox and I moved it all the way across the room or all the way on the other side of the studio and just turned the power up all the way, so I was still getting the same exposure, that giant softbox, when right next to the person, is going to be very soft, fits across the studio, across the room from the person. It's going to get significantly harsher. Okay. So it is not about the brightness or the lack of brightness of the light that controls how harsh or soft it is. It is the size of the light in relation to the subject. So a light bulb far away is an incredibly harsh light. Consider the sun. The sun is like a pinpoint in relation to us. Okay. But if we were standing right next to the sun, provided we're not melting, it would be softer. It'd be incredibly soft. Okay. That's why you see in productions photographers trying to make the source of the light as big as it can in relation to the subject. I mean, ways to do this are put on giant modifiers. Okay. The bigger the modifier and moving that modifier closer to the subject, the more that light is going to spread out. What you'll also see are photographers will put up big scrims. So giant 8x8 sheets or 12x12 sheets, and they'll shoot the light through that. They'll shoot it through a modifier, then shoot it through that. So they're spreading it out even more, diffusing it even more, because they're trying to make as big of a light source as possible in relation to the subject. Okay. Take a light bulb and you move that light bulb right next to someone's face. It's going to be bright, but it'll be soft because it's pretty big in relation to the subject. Okay. The next mistake I see is that there's this assumption that the more light modifiers, or excuse me, the light heads you have or the strobes that you have on set, the better your photo is going to be. And this was, I was guilty of this. I would buy a lot of strobes and set up a lot of strobes, but I wasn't sure what each of them were doing. And I was just overlighting and blowing out the subject, and it just wasn't making a better photo. I was like, well, I have more strobes. Professional photographers use more strobes. How come this isn't working? And it all depends on how you use them. I was on set shooting a magazine cover, and for this magazine shoot, I had an 8 light setup, 8 lights. And this photographer who happened to be on set made a snarky response that, well, it must be hard to take a bad photo with 8 lights, which was a dumb thing to say. And I responded and I says, well, don't buy 8 lights if you don't know how to use one. And I meant it. I didn't learn how to use multiple lights until I figured out how to use a single light. And even to this day, when I'm building out a lighting setup for a person, I build it one light at a time. What does this one light do? Look at the shot. Do I need to add a second in? Do I need to add a third in? One at a time until I build the shot that I want to have. Okay. But more doesn't always equal better. Next mistake is not realizing and appreciating the importance of shadow. What makes our images is ultimately two things: what is exposed, the highlight, and what is not, the shadow. To have exclusively highlights destroys your contrast, but it also destroys the interest in the image itself. It makes it flat. Shadows matter. Where the shadows are matters. The direction of the shadows matters. So honoring both sides of your histogram is important when it comes to lighting your subjects. And kind of a branch off that is not understanding or paying attention to the direction of your light. Where's the light coming from and why is it coming from that way? Why are you choosing to use, for example, short lighting, which I almost exclusively love to use short lighting or some form of backlighting or rim lighting when I'm doing video interviews. Why? Because I feel that it adds more interest and intrigue and dimension to the shot than flat lighting or straight on lighting or any other type of lighting, butterfly or Rembrandt, whatever it is. I think lighting the short side just looks better for video. Does it look better for photos? Depends on my subject. Depends on the type of shot I'm trying to get. Depends on how dramatic I want that photo to be. A lot of my portrait shots, I'm using a butterfly setup or a clamshell setup. Why? Well, because I determined that I like how the shadows fall symmetrically, and I wanted to build a very symmetrical lighting setup. Now, can I do very dramatic portraits with that? That'd be a lot harder to do. So it depends on the context of what I'm shooting. Why do I want Rembrandt lighting or loop lighting when I choose to do that? Understanding the direction of your light is important so that way you can actually light your portraits with intention. Why is the light coming from a certain angle or a certain height or a certain direction? And what are you trying to communicate with that? The next mistake is not balancing the strobes you're using or the constant lights you're using or whatever sort of light mods you're using with the ambient scene. And this comes down to trying to plan out your shot as you go in. Are you trying to overpower and completely eliminate ambient light? Or are you actually trying to work with and incorporate ambient light into the scene, either into the scene as in the environment around your subject, or into the scene as actually you're using it as a light source for your subject as well? The number of times I shoot outdoors and I'm using the sun as my hair light. I've shot outdoors, I've used the sun as my key light, and I just use a strobe as my fill light. Okay. Or I'm shooting in a house and I open up my aperture and I shoot at a higher ISO because I want the natural ambient light coming through the windows to light the scene behind the subject. And then I'm toggling down my strobes to balance with that. Or I'm actually setting up strobes in and around the environment, hiding them behind furniture or hiding them behind different areas to light the scene the way I want to light the scene. And I'm completely ignoring ambient light. But in every instance, we are factoring what the ambient light is doing and how we need to work with it, or are we making a conscious decision to work around it? The next thing is not studying light in photos that you see that you really like that resonate with you. Actually looking at images that really vibe with you and breaking down and trying to deconstruct how that image was lit. Why this image even speaks to you. looking at the catch light in the subject's eyes, looking at the direction of the light, looking at how many lights were used, looking at how soft or harsh the light was, trying to determine what sort of modifier the photographer is using to construct that image, or to construct either the light on the subject or the light in the scene. Learning to deconstruct how light was set up in an image will really help you when it comes to constructing and developing your own style for how you're lighting. And the last big mistake I see photographers make when it comes to lighting is just not trying new things, because ultimately that's how we're going to figure this out. What would it look like if we moved the light a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, if we feathered the light a little bit, if we angled it a little higher up or down or back or forward? What if we changed the mods? What if we gridded the mods? There's an infinite number of things you can do when it comes to lighting your subject. And if you get into a routine where you're just doing the same light over and over and over and over and over again, you're robbing yourself of the opportunity to learn how to manipulate light in very new, very creative, and very innovative ways. So my encouragement to all of you is to keep playing, keep trying new things, because all you will do, the worst thing you will do, is add to your repertoire of lighting styles. Thank you so much for tuning into this, our latest episode of the Beyond the Image podcast. As always, we appreciate your 5-star reviews on the Apple Podcast app, for sharing this podcast with a friend, for subscribing on YouTube, all those things. If there are any topics you want me to cover, shoot me a DM at jpatrickphoto on Instagram. As always, thank you so much. We'll catch you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.